let's talk about why Amarr's new solar harvesters matter. So, before I begin, I want to show that behind me, we see the current state of the solar harvester. We can see that here is the primary harvester being built. Sorry, not harvester, transmuter. It's now called a transmuter. They changed its name, which is only confirms more pieces. See, look, this ring here. Oh wait, no, that. So you can see that they are building basically their own transmuter to point to the sun. There are 3 of them, and they are all in Minmatar systems that are originally held by Minmatar that are currently occupied by the Amarr. So those 3 systems are Bard, that Burner, and Egmar are the 3 systems. All 3 of them have solar harvesters. They're all pretty much identical. I got some footage of them at both of the previous stages. This is the very first stage. You can see that it's mostly just setting up like platforms and stuff. And there is an additional mind if I hold on. Sure. I can pay attention to it. Yeah. Well, I don't think it'll piss off CCP, but it could potentially change how the story unfolds. So all right. So these solar harvester, or this solar transmuter is being built. Actually, I think even on Sissy now it has a description. Yeah, Imperial Prototype Stellar Transmuter. In a development that clearly takes advantage of the Amarr Empire's control of a captured Triglavian Porvitium transmuter in the Arshat system, the Amarr Empire has evidently combined pre-existing Amarr technology used for stellar energy and materials harvesting with the highly advanced deep interaction technology used by the Triglavian collective. The resulting fusion of Amarr and Triglavian technology is difficult to evaluate, but the Empire has taken the decision to deploy this untested capability in select star systems it occupies in the Minmatar Republic's frontier territory. It's also worth noting that when you come to these sites, you can very frequently see Amarr and Minmatar ships around, and they will fight each other if they're both here. So that's worth noting. In fact, I have some footage of them. So let's talk about what is a stellar transmuter. So it all begins with the Porvitium transmuter. The Porvitium transmuter is the device used by the Triglavians to turn the stars red, basically. So the construction of these vast structures is clearly a goal of this phase of the Triglavian Collective's invasion campaign. Edencom Intelligence has assessed these huge arrays with their central structure as stellar harvesting installations capable of delving profoundly into their stars that they are orbiting. The clear intent of this unimaginable spatial temporal manipulation these structures are undertaking to harvest certain resources, and in doing so completely transform the nature of the star itself. This assessment has been implicitly confirmed by this type of installation's repeated monitor signals containing the deciphered term Porvitium transmuter. While these structures initially carry out limited probing and sampling, the power and reach of these harvesters escalate tremendously as an array of zero-point mass energy entanglers is constructed around the core harvester. Barely understood Triglavian technology that has been hitherto seemed a mere scientific curiosity will surely have dire consequences for any star system where their full capability is achieved. So let's go a little bit further back. Okay, these transmuters are deployed by the Triglavians as part of their invasion campaign. So they all began with the Stellar Accelerators, which this YouTuber was kind enough to document. So this basically in between chapter 1 and chapter 2. So late chapter 1, I believe it was. Maybe it was late chapter 2. I can't remember. I think it was late chapter 1. They started the process of deploying these giant structures, these stellar accelerators, they were called. You would go into the site. These Chislav Leshaks would build this thing while you fought dudes. And once it was built, it would broadcast an effect throughout the entire system that remained in place until somebody went in and blew up the structure, which then it would be offline until it respawned, and then somebody else went in and triggered its construction again. So this was early invasions. This was pre-chapter 3, okay? But in chapter 3, it changed, and the Stellar Transmuter, which you can see, like, this is kind of looks very similar, but doesn't have the big laser array in the front. The actual transmuter itself, this is you can see it. You can see it down here at the bottom. This is really small, right? Like it's pretty small comparatively. Sorry, this is way zoomed out, I should say. So you can see the transmuter and it's shooting a laser, and you can see the fully constructed 0-point condensate or 0-point harvesting array, I think is what it's called. The Arshat one never got built. So let's talk about the Arshat structure. During Invasions Chapter 3, Invasions Chapter 3 began on May 26th, 2020. On that day, the invasions changed from being basically a Incursions 2.0 to being a contest system by system for the territory of EVE Online. So basically star systems in high sec and low sec that had a blue or G5 yellow star type were eligible to progress. Now there are other things that could make them not eligible to progress, like them being a Cosmos system. Like there are reasons why they protected certain, but without other protections, those systems were vulnerable to being taken by the Triglavian force. And throughout the campaign of Invasion Chapter 3, systems would come under invasion by the Triglavians, which would begin a contest where players could assist their side by destroying the rats of the opposite side. So if you wanted to work for Edencom, you go there and kill the roaming fleets of Triglavians, and you'd run the Triglavian conduit sites because that spawned Triglavians, and you could kill the Triglavians. The more Triglavians you killed, the more it pushed it in your direction, in the direction of Edencom. The more Edencom you killed, the more it pushed it in the direction of Triglavians. So if a system got pushed one way or the other all the way to the end, then that side won. And if that system could progress, which meant it was the right kind of star, then it would enter into the second phase. With Triglavians, it would go into first and second liminality, and then finally lock in at final liminality. On Edencom side, it would go from redoubt to bulwark, and then finally become a fortress. Systems that could not progress eventually were made such that when they were completed, they became minor victories. This is how we got Triglavian minor victories, Edencom minor victories, and Edencom fortresses. We don't have Triglavian final liminalities because the 27 systems that were taken as final liminalities are now Pochvin. All right, we all caught up? Good. So the thing is that there was, in theory, a possibility that a side could progress it to phase 2, but then fail to complete it. And there was a theoretical possibility that the other side could pull it back to their side. And CCP even specified that if this was to be done, it would just then proceed into phase 2 of the other side. It wouldn't go back to phase 1. Now, I remember that the Triglavian group had basically determined that this was mathematically impossible. In mid-August, Arshat goes liminal. In other words, the system of Arshat enters into first liminality. However, Edencom deploys in force. There's a report by Arcia Elkin from that time that is an explanation of exactly what happened. But basically, they were prepared, and they come in, and they threw everything they had at it within the system. It is a low-sec system, so there is less influence, less people just sitting there running it. Although, by the time it goes liminal, it already is low-sec. They actually managed, this is the one time during invasions that they allow one side clawed victory from the other side. So the system of Arshat was fortified after first liminality began, okay? Which is why when first liminality began, the Triglavians deployed their transmuter, but because it never proceeded into second and third liminality, so the second and final liminality, the rest of the shield wasn't built. All right, so that's why we see this very, this is the rudimentary version of the Das Porvitium transmuter, and this is, of course, a finished version of the Das Porvitium. Now, oh, hey. So it is important to note that the Das Porvitium transmuter is not the same thing as a stellar observatory. It is easy to assume that because the stellar accelerator was the thing that made the effect, and this is a fairly dramatic effect here, that the influence on the solar system that is occurring in Edencom and Triglavian held systems, the buffs and the weather effects in those systems, are created by the stellar observatories and the Das Porvitium transmuter. While it is true that it is being created by the stellar observatories, insofar as going in there and blowing them up will destroy those are actually there's the Federal Stellar Observatory, the Imperial Stellar Observatory, the Republic Stellar Observatory, and the State Stellar Observatory. These are deployed within those Edencom systems, within those empires. And then it's the Das Liminality Locus that is the Triglavian equivalent that puts out the energy. So that is not what what Amarr are building. They already have Imperial Stellar Observatories. This is not a stellar observatory. This is a transmuter. In fact, we actually have, from Singularity, a picture of the shield that looks far more in progress, probably finished, by the Amarr. So, on June 20th of this year, during Federation Day, it was announced that the Amarr militarization of captured Triglavian Stellar Harvester protested by Federation and Republic. I think it was hinted at once before, maybe not. But this says, Amarr Empire military construction and domination of ongoing research at the captured Triglavian Das Porvitium transmuter and Arshat system has led to serious diplomatic protests from the Galente Federation and Minmatar Republic. More commonly known as the Stellar Harvester, the captured Triglavian device has been the subject of ongoing investigations by Imperial Science Team and Edencom investigators. In the last few weeks, the Amarr Empire have constructed 2 major, heavily militarized facilities in close proximity to the captured Stellar Harvester. So, these buildings to the left and right here didn't previously exist. You can see the Amarr Stellar accelerator in the back here. Second. Sorry, the Stellar Observatory in the back here. But these two constructions, these two stations to the left and right, are new. The appearance of these new structures have caused considerable disquiet in Concord's inner circle and among Federation and Republic delegations. Lente Ambassador Devin Malatate expressed the quote, most grave concerns of the Lente Federation at the unwarranted militarization of a site that should more properly be administered under the provisions of established interstellar law. Minmatar Ambassador Kaitan Yun had harsh words for both the Amarr Empire and Edencom. Quote, it has been long clear to the people of the Minmatar Republic that Edencom is institutionally biased towards the Amarr Empire. Now this latest outrage confirms a situation that has come close to conspiracy, as the Amarr flagrantly steal a vital asset from the interstellar community under the noses of Edencom. Be assured, the matter shall not rest here. The Amarr Empire and Caldari delegations declined to comment on this development. In a possible related move, diplomatic correspondence reports that Amarr delegate Captain Marshal Serdan Zerkosh, there's that guy again, has been recalled to Amarr Prime for an audience with Empress Caddis I. This is the same time that the Othanoon structure was discovered. All right? So, that leads us to August 12th of this year. The systems of Bard, Egmar, and Turner. We find the Transmuters, and even in the description, it points out that these are within Minmatar territory, but currently Amarr held. So we're not 100% sure why this would, what would happen, for instance, if, wait, what? No, stop. I'm trying to spell things right, not, there we go. What would happen if the Minmatar took it back? Maybe they'll destroy them? Who knows? So why is this such a concern? Yeah, sugar baby. Somebody said that earlier. That sucks. All right, why is this a concern? Let's begin with Archive K. Archive K is a secret organization. Well, really, we know very little about Archive K. It only shows up in a few places. The one that we know the most about is right here in the Grissus Pirates implicated in raid of House of Records archives. We see informed sources have claimed that staff from Archive K have arrived in Artaurus to oversee the House of Records investigation. Archive K has long been rumored to be a secret intelligence and security branch of the House of Records. So Archive K is a secret intelligence and security branch of the House of Records, supposedly. Now, if we go back, though, we can see this chronicles Sine Wave Omega, which I should be coming out with the video for that very soon. In this, we have... Where's it at? Yeah. So in this, when the chief investigator gets a report from the main character, that things are going weird, or that there's a lot of irregularities in the investigation, what the chief investigator does is he calls the House of Records, which is the Caldari. It's basically where the Caldari record everything. And he asks to be connected to Havo Tagamitsu in Archive K. Archive K requires authorization. He gives his authorization as his name, Sutter Colonel Parvas Sarkovas, Amarr Naval Intelligence, Archive K designation, card player. That's who this guy is. And then she asks for identification package. He types in a code. She confirms it. Refers to him as card player, and he gets connected to the Tethys, which is a type of Caldari. I've always read this wrong. My bad. I've always thought that, because this is a Arctura woman, but that's the one that connects him. The other person Hava Tagamutsu is a male. For some reason, I always thought that was a female. Either way, connects to him, and they have a chat. They clearly know each other. They reference to some shadiness in Sarkophas's past, blah, 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 blah. They discuss intel involving the what's going on. They have lots of contacts and ability to pull up information. Then they hang up. The reason why this is important is because then in YC122, so 2020, August 5th, we actually have an announcement that Solder Colonel Parvas Sarkophas is named Chief of Edencom Intelligence Directorate by Provost Marshal Valkanir. So there's that Master Inquisitor, the card player. But then also Director Havo Tagamitsu of Caldari House of Records appointed to head of EID Cultural Intelligence Section. So there's the other half of Archive K. So these two characters, which are in Omega, Sine Wave Omega, are now key leaders within Edencom. Tying Caldari and Amarr kind of together in their operations, which makes the Edencom structure in Caldari space and the Amarr structure in the Amarr harvesters kind of sus together. But we will talk a little bit more about that conspiracy another time. For now, just suffice it to say that there's a lot more weirdness going on when it comes to the Caldari or the Amarr harvester and the connections between them and the Caldari and other secret operations than is immediately apparent. But who cares? Who cares? So allow me to ask you a question. What are the harvesters harvesting? It's a fair question, right? Shh, Valamir. The teacher's pet answering it quick. Thanks, Valamir. No, obviously they're not harvesting hydrogen, or helium, or even iron, or any of those kinds of things. Nice. Those are pretty typical, and that's what you would normally see in a star. However, EVE Online has a MacGuffin. It has an unobtainium of sorts. Isogen 5. Isogen 5 is an exceedingly rare, extremely unstable variant of Isogen found only in bright blue type 01 systems. Its rarity is at a point that it, until recently, is half believed to be only theoretical in nature. It glows very brightly. Isogen 5 may have been used to fuel Jamil Sorum's superweapon. This mineral variant has been deliberately placed throughout every system in New Eden and beyond in numerous stockpiles for various specific unknown purposes by an ancient race with a vision beyond the grasp of modern and the technological advancement to execute that vision. So, Isogen 5 is known for two different things, historically. One, it was used in Jamil's superweapon in the Empyrean Age as both the fuel and the fire, as it were. Basically, it... did I... Well, there's a video. EVE on. So in this clip, this right here is the Elder Fleet. This is the most powerful fleet that the Minmatar have amassed. It is a combination of the Thucker tribes and the Elders, efforts, with a bunch of money that was funneled from the Navy and all that stuff. So this is a big fleet. They've managed to push deep into the heart of Amarr territory and now are floating in, or they're in the system of Sorum Prime above the city of Mechior, where outcome from warp comes Jamil Sorum in an Abaddon, where she launches a super weapon which jumps electricity throughout the entire fleet, causing all of the ships, including the Titan, to spontaneously come. That is the power of the superweapon. The description of which goes, a blue-white sphere of fire projected in front of the Abaddon, intensifying electrostatic charges began leaping outside of it. The battleship changed from its golden hue color to a radiant white. Victor thought the ship was about to turn into molten slag when, as in a scene of God's wrath described in the scriptures, the ball of energy erupted into cataclysmic arc charge dozens of kilometers long, cutting through space like lightning. The bolt slammed into the lead Balgorn-class battleship and then branched out, spreading ship to ship, every Covenant hull coruscated in electrostatic charges, and then, as if all infected by the same disease, Victor saw the shield bubbles surrounding each ship implode violently all at once. Dozens of explosions and overlapping shockwaves rippled through space. No sooner had the bolt dissipated when the Apocalypse battleship behind Sorum opened fire in unison, walking their combined firepower across each defenseless, maimed Blood Raider ship. Explosions blossomed against everything that the searing white beams touched. And then later on, the pilot swore he heard a shrieking laughter of a woman. A blue-white lightning lashed out from the radiance, striking the Ragnarok Titan and then arcing like a spreading plague to every other ship in the fleet. Blinding by the brilliant flash, the pilot wrenched the control stick backwards, pulling his craft away from the towering capital ship ahead. Horrified to the core of his soul, he watched the bolt as it leapt from ship to ship. He saw the bubble auras of shields coruscate from white to fiery red as their defenses turned inward, directing their repulsive forces towards the very hulls that they were designed to protect. Most shattered instantly, while others were left hopelessly crippled. Before the pilot's eyes, the great Ragnarok began to break apart. The cries of a million Minmatars filled the comms channel as panic, despair, and death brought doom to the Elder Task Force. Storm's fleet racked their deadly beams of fire from ship to ship like soulless executioners, systematically destroying everything that survived in the apocalyptic attack. As the bolt lashed out towards him, the pilot cursed at God for every shred of hate. So, pretty strong. Turning shields inside out. And then from the Templar 1, we see a much longer report of the Isogen 5 event. There is a chronicle. Yeah. So in the chronicle, End of the World, well, actually, End of the World is just one of several. Okay, that's the first one. Well, the End of the World series is several chronicles, the first one being one, which tell the story of the Sisters of Eve rediscovering Jamil's superweapon. At this point, it had been towed to a structure by the rogue drones, which we now know as being one of the caches of Isogen 5. And they were stuffing Isogen 5 into it. Kind of, it seems like these rogue drones are more or less programmed to harvest Isogen 5 and bring them to this cache, and it just brought the Abaddon in with it. But when the rogue drones killed the sisters, the Blood Raiders that traced the rogue drones tried to get Jamil's superweapon, but then the Thucker pilot, or the Thucker cruiser ship crew that followed the Blood Raiders fired on the ship, destroying it, but at the same time causing all of these 10 different these 10 different places to explode in what is known as the Apocrypha event. So these 10 star systems simultaneously had an explosion as their cache, which was apparently quantumly entangled, of Isogen 5, detonated and poured energy into the star, which caused a massive coronal injection, blowing forward, blowing up the first system in those. Garifin, thank you for that raid. Glorification of the fit, mortification of the unfit. Garifin, you are glorified. Yeah, Salian, this is also why it's called the Salian Project, because the system of Salian is where we have most of the reports from, and it was where we first found out about the explosion. Because Galente had a series of satellites known as Cassandra around the star that identified what was going on. This is also where the wormhole started, and this event destabilized the star W477 TAC-P, which was being used by the Talican in order to construct Anoikis, and caused that star to destabilize. When it detonated in 2014, that was known as the Caroline Star event, which is what brought us the drifters, so on and so forth. Got it. Cool. So Isogen 5, cool stuff. Thank you for joining us down the rabbit hole. So, yeah, it says right here, sir, if I didn't know any better, I'd say that Isogen 5 is being used as the fuel for the whole clockwork or the ammo. The whole idea is that, yeah, this was it, the whole thing, the gun and the bullet, the flame and the fuel, the fabled super weapon, and the Isogen 5. So in the analysis, we see ZTAC IPZ was classified as a vital point of interest in the eyes-only investigation of Empress Jamil's Zera effect weapon. That's actually the name that they now call the super weapon, named after the city above which the weapon was used. Oh, so I guess it was the planet Mechios. Zera is the system, is the city. My bad. Like Salian 1, the innermost planet of TTAC IPZ was destroyed, and a gamma burst was traced back through the vicinity of an ancient Terran station orbiting the same planet. The station, whose origin predated the closure of the Eve Gate by 1400 years, was the location where an extremely rare and volatile mineral known as Isogen 5 was stockpiled. This mineral exists only in presence of blue star systems and loses its volatile property when removed from the original locale. Isogen 5 possesses unique gravitonic properties whose behavior is not understood. Its scarcity and hostile native environment made it difficult to study. It is not known why the Terrans were stockpiling this material. Before its destruction, Thanatos discovered that drones manufactured autonomously within the station possessed technology to move the material from its source to the station. Conventional ships cannot even approach it. Later, it was discovered that the same technology that protects these drones is used in the Zera effect weapon housing, which requires the mineral as a primer to fire. But most importantly, Thanatos observed that the low orbit area where the weapon was fired remains symptomatic of dark matter collisions observable just outside of the event horizon of black holes. Cross-bane gravitonic distortions in normal time-space still resonate at both this site and the former site of the Terran station obliterated during the Apocrypha. Subsequent Thanatos units confirmed that all 10 Apocrypha locations contain the same post-event trace residue of an Isogen 5 detonation, all of which were presumably large enough to cause the immense gamma burst radiation at each site. Yeah, no, I acknowledge the raid. I got it. Thank you very much. You guys are awesome. How was your stream, by the way, Darafin? And then in the conclusion from Templar 1, it says, the Isogen 5 stockpiles were entangled, either the detonators or the material itself. No other explanation can account for the simultaneous events across multiple star systems. The purpose of the stockpile was to draw an energy yield from the sun that Isogen 5 by itself could not reach to achieve some kind of critical mass. The Terrans had the means to transport the material anywhere they wished. There's no discernible reason why they needed a structure so close and so large and close to the star, except for the explicit purpose of amassing concentrations large enough to interact with the star. Well, that can be good or bad, depending. The event expenditure was intended to be destructive. The lack of Terran structures anywhere else in the system, in addition to the placement of environmentally hostile locations near Type O-class stars, suggest that they were built with the intent to eventually destroy them. It is possible that the Terrans were constructing an interstellar transit system similar to, but much more advanced than our own Stargate transit system. The post-event gravitonic residue, Isogen 5 properties, placements near the massive objects like Class O stars, resulting topological point defects, and consistent presence of sleeper colonies in W space suggest that the Terrans already had jump technology, but were attempting to harness natural forces to achieve a similar result. The transit system was either incomplete when the event occurred, or was detonated incorrectly, or we do not yet understand how to use it. What appears to Empyreans as random wormhole activity may in fact follow a pattern, but no such analysis has been attempted. The New Eden's leading authority on sleepers, Dr. Marcus Yor, former chief scientist of Amarr and holder Phallic Range, his whereabouts are currently unknown. He has been designated a Tier 1 surveillance target for Thanatos pending acquisition of any information that could lead to his... So this is the conclusion of the investigation done by Concord, right? And into the event. I actually really like the description of what happened too. So let's look into it. At approximately 1100 hours on 10th of March, YC-111, the last telemetry received from this network revealed several anomalies. That a drastic and unexpected shift in magnetic activity in the solar atmosphere had occurred. That this field shift was oriented in the same plane and direction as the planet Salian 1. That an abnormally large solar preeminence or pre-acceleration CME event filled this field almost instantly. That a separate powerful gamma ray burst was detected away from the star but inside of the orbit of Salian 1, and along the same plane as both the planet and the solar prominence. Less than 10 minutes after Cassandra went offline, the side of Salian 1 facing the sun was struck by the largest proton storm ever recorded. A mega dose of gamma and X-rays destroyed installations as deep as 30 meters below the surface, flash ionizing the air supply and igniting every surface within. Although the night side of the planet was somewhat shielded and thus spared the full brunt of the blast, the storm was powerful enough to destroy electrical grids supplying the underground cities of Lodecor and Southern Cross. If Salian 1 had an atmosphere to start with, it would have been vaporized entirely or blasted away into space. Several hours later, the ejected coronal mass, traveling at speeds approaching 1/4 the speed of light and estimated to be in orders of magnitude more massive than the average Class G event, slammed into the planet with enough force to break it apart, completely reshaping the world into molten rock and metal. The colonists who survived the initial radiation blast perished in the cataclysm that followed. Survivors who were evacuated to the system before the CME arrived suffered disfiguring burns and the immediate onset of aggressive forms of cancer. Of the millions who were killed, the vast majority of Federation citizens, in all 10 New Eden star systems, each with Class O or Class B blue stars, were struck with stellar anomalies identical to what occurred in Salen, all at the same time. Of the systems where solar weather data was recovered, each one recorded identical anomalies. An unspeakably powerful magnetic shift and accelerated CME event with the local sun, along with simultaneous isolated detonations of concentrated gamma radiation from a location between the system's innermost planet and the sun itself. Of these affected systems, TTAC-IPZ provided us with the most clues as to the cause. And then it goes into So, are the primary directions of the United Federation of... So, this is... so Isogen 5 is basically, like I said in the beginning, it is the MacGuffin. It is the unobtainium. It is assumed that that is a big reason why the Triglavians were targeting those kinds of stars, the blue stars and the G5 giant yellow star, right? The assumption has always been that the Triglavians are not it has always been a pretty popular theory that the thing that the Triglavians are trying to harvest from these stars are Isogen 5, because that's what makes those stars interesting. So the idea, it isn't that the Amarrians are beginning stellar harvesting that makes me nervous. It is the substance that they would, in theory, be harvesting that makes me worried, right? The problem is that the Jamil superweapon was developed and built by the Amarr. And while Jamil is gone, her scientists aren't. There are people in the Amarr Empire today that understand how that superweapon worked, or at least how it got installed into the Abaddon. And when you combine that with the ability to acquire Isogen 5, who the hell knows what kind of capabilities that that would give the Amarr above all of the others. Now, the final piece to the puzzle, which we will again go into more next time, is that on the other side of the cluster, we have the Caldari and the Gallente, who have been in conflict. And while we do have Othanun, the other thing that we have is we have the Ugalis situation, which I made a video about already. Basically, in the system of Ugalis, there has been the uncovering of precursor artifacts that seem connected to illegal AI usage. So we have a precursor artifact that appears to be connected to strong AI, which implies to me that it is very possible that one of the ancient precursors, possibly the Yanyong, were digitized themselves in a very capsuleer kind of way, and that recently the Caldari/Edencom have exhumed them and awoken it. So if the Caldari have access to a precursor intelligence, and the Amarr have access to harvesting Isogen 5, and there's a secret intelligence operation between the two known as Archive K, and two of the key members of Archive K happen to be the two leading members of Edencom intelligence, can you see why I get a little paranoid about it? Can you see why I'm a little bit worried about what they might be up to? What they think, what are the Amarr capable of in their pursuit to prove their predestination by God? There are a few different theories that you could do. They could destroy these star systems, or at least blow up the planets. That's the easy one. They could use these to create new wormholes, potentially. The Isogen 5 is strongly related to wormholes and transport, teleportation technology, I guess is a good way to put it. Yeah, so this is hyper sus. I do have more to say about Isogen 5, but I'm going to save that for another time. I have a theory that I think is an addendum. I have a video that's already up. That's my tinfoil. That's my whole story of like what I think has happened, the story so far, piecing it all together. I have another piece, which is how EVE Online's physics work in relationship to gravity. And I'm really excited for that, and I'm pulling it all together, but I'm not ready to present that today. So we'll just put a pin in that for now. Just realize that Isogen 5 is an absolutely critical substance, and if one empire or one side of the empires manage to acquire control over it and its use over the other side, this could be absolutely disastrous for the cluster. Any questions? We could use a couple less systems in game. You know, we took 27 systems and people won't stop crying about it. So you'd be surprised. Yeah, questions, comments, concerns, anything? All right, well, if not. How's this connected to faction warfare? So this is the tension that's building up, right? So first of all, these harvesters are all within faction warfare systems. So in theory, these systems could be captured by the Minmatar right now, and could affect the course of events. Or, right now, those three systems are still in control by the Amarr. But in theory, if those systems were to be flipped, the Minmatar would be able to have access to that construction. This is the current arc, right? So on this side, we have the Amarr building facilities in these three locations. Sorry, this one, and this one. And then on the Caldari side, we have ongoing fighting, or at least an ongoing operation here, which the Caldari have pretty well secured and controlled since. Okay, Theo, in Corp, I'm not logged in at the moment. Hold on. I don't know what you mean. So, so I think that this is like, as these events play out, these are going to be the flashpoints that begin the new. Basically, this represents a breakdown in Concord, right? The Concord agreements have completely failed. All four actors, or at least three of the four actors, are now doing things that are not only questionable, but sometimes downright against the rules of the faction warfare. There's an agreement called the Emergency Malicious War Powers Act that was created because of the Empyrean Age events, that basically decided that the empires couldn't go to war with each other because that would be too disastrous for everybody, and so that they were just going to settle it by having the Capsuleers fight a proxy war over that territory, which is what faction warfare is. So what we're seeing here is a complete breakdown of those agreements, which is what's going to precipitate the change in how faction warfare behaves. And the continuation of these systems, who controls it, and what goes on as this plays out, I think will affect the future of this story. Which one's the Ugidi console? I don't actually. Either way. I think it's this one, right? It's Fortress is set and flows this win. Either way. So yeah, all very interesting stuff. Just wanted to get you guys a little bit caught up. I've got more. There's a lot more going on, but we'll probably talk about that tomorrow. Also tomorrow, we will be looking into, hopefully I'll have Dutch Gunner on, and we will be chatting about his recent operation that he did in Pokvin, which his previous attempt was in the news, but was kind of one of the things that we didn't really know very much about. So I'm going to be talking to him about both those operations and kind of what he's trying to do there tomorrow. So that'll be exciting. Oof. Anything else I wanted to go over? I think that's it. Oh, one last thing, I guess. So this is the solar construction site as it originally was. I took some footage. So it's already been built up quite a little bit, and then on top of that, like here's the framework, but compare that to. Whoop, that wasn't the right. That wasn't the right box to. Whoop. So basically, here's that same framework. Yeah. You can really see that the whole transmuter part of it is relatively new. That's the part that's being built up. Is still things in game currently around this arc that hasn't been found? There is. Yeah, there's definitely suggestions that there are pieces that are not yet found. We have also found the Galente and the Caldari Stargates. Caldari Stargate, which appears to be pointing to Othanoon. And I haven't put the I put the Glente one up. Reply. There it is. So we oh yeah, okay, because I retweeted somebody. Reese. So here's the Glente Stargate under construction in Amignon, and here's the Caldari Stargate under construction in Samanuni. Now it's interesting to note that it appears that Samanuni is pointed towards Othanoon. It does not appear as if the Glente Stargate is. It looks like the Glente Stargate could be pointed towards the Intaki-ish area, which is where the Ugali's, Ugali's, yeah, it's Ugidi constellation, Ugali's system. Yeah. So we'll have to see how these things develop. I'm not showing it to you. Let me show it to you. Here's the Glente Stargate. Here's the Caldari one. So yeah, there's definitely stuff out there, and they've also added a ton of stuff into the game without like, they've been sneaking things in a lot more. There's been a lot more put in that maybe we don't necessarily know whether or not it's been used yet or not over the course of the last several months. But also, I've noticed that they've gotten a lot sneakier at how they put things in. So, for example, with these transmuters, or no, with the Stargates, what they did was they put in just the text GBG AC 0 SG or something like that. I can't remember. But it was like the Glente Stargate and the Caldari Stargate, right? But it was just an abbreviation. And it wasn't necessarily even tied, like the object it was tied to was basically blank. And so when it got added to HoboLeaks, it gets added as basically a nothing item. But then later in a future update, they change the item. First they change the Stargate, or they change it to the Stargate, and they also, I think at a different time, maybe change the text of it to Caldari Stargate. This makes it so that that change is nestled in the existent changes differently in HoboLeaks. It makes it so it doesn't stand out as much. When they add in something and they add it in as a new item with the name already attached to it, it's very quick to be able to pull it out. But catching them changing something is a bit more tricky. So, and while they have changed names and descriptions and stuff last second, it does appear as if they also like changed the models in some cases. Like they literally just put in like a blank item and then later on put in the real thing in its place, which reads as an update to us as opposed to a new item. Yes, all of these are items are just beacons and and don't add activities to players. The Othanoon event, that's absolutely not true. So in Othanoon, there was fighting with Glente and Caldari forces. You could actually loot the wrecks to get data things, which could then be accessed to get pieces of the videos, which are the videos that we got from of the Edencom. Oh, no. Extra special thanks to Riley for not only covering all this stuff, but taking over when I could. So this footage, each block of this footage was individual video that had to be reconstructed from wreckage found off of these rats.
Proceeding to the operations control center.
So there's that one. And then there have the next. Oops. Yeah.
Some power here. Are you seeing this? Looks like Commander's right.
So that's inside their command room. And then finally, we got these videos.
Archer State, Mountain Report. Accurate news.
We don't know, Nth. I went over a few theories. So yeah, though, and that last footage, actually, there is a Edencom relay center in space in Othanoon, and if you do something to it, I thought it was in Tosis, you got the records that would become this video, the video we just, yeah, in Tosis. So, and then likewise in space here, when I came here, there were rats fighting. So in the beginning, when I first showed up, there was Minmatar and Amarr rats fighting each other. Now, by the time I started recording, there was only one Minmatar left. But the Amarr were definitely going after him. So when or if there will be something for us to do at the Solar Harvester site, I don't know. But there seems to be something going on. And now there's new blockades or checkpoints, military checkpoints being built within Galente and Caldari territories. It's getting heating up. And here's the thing, like, when people talk about, you know, when I tell the story about the lead up to invasions, or lead up to the release of the Triglavians, or the Caroline Star event, people are always like, man, I wish I could have been part of that, or whatever. But here's the thing, this is that, right? We are living in a story that will be told. So while it may not look like much right now, every little tiny thing matters. Every name that makes a name for themselves now will become part of that story, right? In the same way that we talk about Arcia and, you know, the Kybernauts and, you know, these various people from the Invasion storyline. This is the lead up to the Empires going to war. So, kind of excited. They've also, it's worth noting that they did suggest that there would be new ships this month, and that our actions would decide who gets it and who gets delayed or may not even get it at all. So it is definitely 1000% worth getting out there and keeping your eyes open. Yeah, oh yeah.